I'd like to call the order of the Committee of the Whole for March 22nd, 2022. Attendance roll call.
Alderpersons Madden.
Here.
Kubaki.
Here.
Engelhardt.
Here.
Kapusta is absent. Terrence.
Here.
Hamel.
Here.
And Wolf.
Here.
We have a quorum present.
Thank you. Statement of public notice.
The meeting was noticed in accordance with the open meeting law.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Approval of the minutes from January 25th, 2022.
Move to approve. Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? That passes. New business. Discussion on Park Arthur field access. This was brought to me by Alderman Terrence, so I will turn it over to him.
Yeah, apologize. I was going to send out something this week, but it's been a busy work week with a new job. I brought this up to the mayor. Thank you for throwing this on the agenda. I had a few community people reach out regarding when the fields were going to be open, kind of parents / dads that coach their kids, and so I just checked in with Parks, and what it sounds like is the plan is to have it locked 24/7 unless somebody's renting it. And so just kind of was a little bit concerned that we have all 3 fields that are inaccessible there for just kind of your random people to show up. I had a coach of a local team, not a club team, sort of a younger girls team that had asked and said, hey, it looked like there were people on the field when the fence was locked. So there are people that are hopping the fence. I don't know if we're monitoring. I guess the reason why I wanted to bring it up is I would like to see maybe a balance. I understand you're being responsible with the resources that were invested. I get that, trying to sort of protect it. But also we have a public park with 3 public fields, and we used public funds, and now we've sort of turned it into a for-profit venture as opposed to it being something that has kind of a balance. I guess maybe a suggestion would be we maybe lock one of them or open one of them, just something so that we have community members that, for example, when my kid was 12, I had 12 girls, I had 3 pitchers. We were out at Park Arthur about 2 nights a week, me with 3 pitchers on the fields, kind of working, not as a team, just as hey, it's the community park that's there. Well, as of right now, I would either have to choose a different park or hop the fence, which I'm not obviously going to do. And also, I'm not coaching this year, so I'm a little bit of have a different perspective, but just would love to see that not be something that the objection there that, hey, we've taken the public parks and now they're basically something that is we're focusing on the revenue and locking it up and not letting people on the field. So it's kind of where that discussion has started.
So I'll just kind of circle back to when we created these and made the approval for converting these to AstroTurf from being regular grass fields. One of the reasons that we did this was to have controlled better costs for the actual community teams and organizations that are using those fields from a field prep standpoint. Their cost went from, I'm going off the top of my head, roughly $140, $120? $175. Okay, $175 a game to to $100 per day for using the fields. So that's one of the reasons we did this. So there was a much larger investment in putting turf down than just doing a seeded field. And one of the ways of recovering that cost, and it's not so much, I don't know if we'll ever recover our actual cost of building it, but what we will recover is building enough funds to redo them when we need to, because these have a lifespan, like all things. And so the idea is not so much as a profit center, but have it self-sustaining so much. We talked about it when we did approve it as far as what access would be like. We had put in the charge and it's got to be reserved. And we did talk about having them not available for Joe Blow public just to walk up to it and use it, because there's someone needs to be in care of those things while they're not being used. They can get damaged very easily if not used properly. And if it's like, if I'm a baseball organization coming in and I'm going to be reserving that field. Well, we know who reserved it. We know who to go back to if there's damage to it and if it's not done properly. If you leave those gates unlocked, we've seen people before, and we'll see, I'm sure we would see it in the future, using it not only just for baseball, but they'll be running their dogs in there because it's a nice controlled fenced in area. So they bring their dogs in there. You have people will drag soccer apparatuses in there and play soccer on them. And that sounds harmless, but it's not what those fields are made to be used as. I'm sure I'm going to let staff after come up and talk about more concerns because they actually deal with this more than I do. The other thing we spoke about is for practices, yes, you can reserve it for a practice, but if you really want to practice, what you can do, we have baseball fields all over this community, Bloom, Kurth, Horn, that if they just want to go practice, they can go to those fields and use those. If we're concerned about pitching or hitting, my recommendation would be in the future, as we build out that park, let's add a bullpen area and a batting cage into it. Those are relatively inexpensive, and those you could leave open, and that's what they're built to do. There's really no reason to have a 12-year-old kid and 3 of his friends going out on that field unsupervised using a AstroTurf field. None of the other communities that have these do that. They're all used and reserved for when they do it.
So that's actually not true. Bayview's field is open.
Bayview?
Yep, Bayview, yep.
They have a
Sorry, Whitefish Bay. Sorry, wrong. Whitefish Bay has a field attached to the high school in their park that's open. And kind of the way they've monitored it, because we've played there, it's one that we've been on. They have signs, the other one is golf. People do golf on there, which you really don't want to do because if it's, he's no way.
Thanks for making my point.
So then you get into enforcement. I think we're putting restrictions on those that are going to damage the field. A 2.5 foot, 3 foot fence, they're going to hop the fence and they're going to damage the field.
They're also going to
those
be under,
that are. I let you talk. If you could let.
Going to be under surveillance and tickets.
That's okay. Yep. So I let you speak. I didn't interrupt you. Please don't interrupt me. And from my perspective, for us to lock the field just because we may see damage, right? And I respect you've been entrusted with a resource as a department, and it's expensive, and I get it. And I think it's our job to maybe free you from one of those to say, hey, there's one that we're going to leave open. And when it's damaged, we're responsible to know that, hey, we left it open, but we left it open because of X, Y, and Z. So I get that you're wanting that from us, and that's what I'm asking, that this body here says, hey, we're willing to leave one of them open, and the damage that comes is something that then we are responsible for having given that okay. I mean, we could have that same discussion on every piece of apparatus park, every development that's in place, but ultimately we did use taxpayer dollars. It wasn't funded by a private entity. It wasn't like The Rock. The Rock is private. They have turf fields. They're locked up because their goal is to generate revenue. For us, it was to kind of improve on the community. In my opinion, I think it is valid to have 3 kids or a dad and 4 kids or somebody's party where, hey, we're going to go out play on the turf field because around here right now you can't go out on the grass because it's a mud pile. So that's sort of why it benefits our area to utilize turf. The one out in Whitewater only has 1. This is where we get into, we did all of them. If we were to roll back and say, hey, turf one of them, leave the other 2, if we're really concerned about having people on there, we've converted all of them, obviously hindsight. But in Whitewater, the city has 1, it's locked up. Nobody can get on it, but they also have 3 fields around it that are in that same park that are dirt fields that are open. So, I'd be willing to, in my discussion, I'd be willing to say it's a fair compromise to say, hey, lock 2 of them, lock 1 of them, pick ones and make those sort of your tournament fields and then monitor the other ones. Because, my question that is, are we ticketing for trespassing at the moment? If somebody hops the fence, are we going to call the cops and show up and write them a ticket as it is right now?
Can you? That's a big question. It's a public park.
No, well, just because things are owned by the public doesn't make them public access. So think of it like gymnasium. If we were to have a high school gymnasium, or if we had one as a city, just because it's paid for with public dollars and it's made part of public doesn't mean the public have complete access to it.
Public park, I think you call public parks, right?
Jeff, can you,
Those are called public schools.
Yeah, well, I mean,
is your microphone on? Is your mic on?
I forgot to turn it off. I said, I think I was saying because they're public parks, but I guess they're called public schools. I don't know, I'm just bringing it up. I mean, to me, I'm thinking, it was all taxpayers that paid for this. It was always a park before that. And now we took it away from everybody and we used the taxpayers' money. I would think all of them should be unlocked. As far as being a public park, that's how I think of it. But, you know, I mean, there's valid reasons not to. I would almost like to hear some of the comments from the public on it too as well. I mean, this is a good conversation to have. And there's 7 of us up here, so I'd like to hear some more from some other people too.
it's only 6 today.
Or 6. Well, 7 with the mayor today.
I remember back at that meeting, we all discussed this pretty extensively, and we all talked about how that's a lot of money and we need to be able to recoup, and how it was going to be very expensive. And I'm afraid if we open even one field up, it's not just going to be dad and a couple kids or a coach and a couple kids. That field's open, it's going to be everybody and anybody, and it's going to get tore up a lot faster than we were planning on.
You are going to, it's more ripe for vandalism by leaving the gates unlocked, kids riding bikes. I mean, all the stuff kids are going to do. Either Ryan or Tammy, if you could come up and just kind of explain some of the stuff that you see happening on any given day on the cameras and either in our parks.
Well, I mean, you're people that
I don't think it's on.
Fence is not stopping them. Somebody's going to be stupid.
And are you on here, Christine?
Yes.
So we do have cameras on those parks that pick up the area around them and exactly on the field. There are signs that say they can't be on the fields right now. They are still closed because the work is not done. And so that is the main reason they are locked, not keeping people off them because we don't want them to play on it. There's still punch list items that need to be done, and Ryan can address that. There are open turf areas there where turf was peeled back because concrete work needed to be done. The grass is not yet developed. And so we're keeping people off for that reason, so games can begin. And so there are people hopping it. There was a gentleman who was placing his dogs over the fence and hopping the fence himself, letting his dogs run, poop in the outfield, and leave. He never cleaned up. There have been high school kids hitting hard balls, hitting them against the fence, hitting them over the fence, running through the outfield, climbing the fence to get the balls to throw them all back in. So they're walking through the areas that are seated and they shouldn't be on. So there is a lot of people on there. We do call the police during our daytime hours when we see it. They go up, they're just giving friendly reminders. But should they see somebody that is going over the boundary, what they should do, they do have the right to write a citation because we do have signage up there. And we do have park hours in all of our parks. You can't be in our park after 10 o'clock or before 5 in the morning. You do get tickets for that as well.
You can be there at 5 in the morning.
Any other questions on policing?
And I don't think that changes. I mean, you could still have, again, the one up in Whitefish Bay, there's an ordinance about you can't have dogs on there, you can't have golfing on there. Your enforcement is there's a fence, there's not a fence. You have, the fact that we have cameras is super nice. I don't know how, are we doing somebody watching them all day, or is you have motion alerts where it kind of kicks off, or if you just happen to catch them?
There's some of us that have them. They're on
Okay, got it. So you are monitoring, cool.
Public Works are on mine quite a bit.
Got it. And those are still things that, hey, you could still issue that fine. As somebody that's run a club team, I don't think you're going to lose revenue by having those open. A team that has a legitimate schedule and knowing that there's reservations is not showing up with 12 kids, 12 parents without having reserved that field, because that'll happen once and then you'll have really ticked off parents when you have an overlap. So I don't see it as being a loss of revenue, but I understand that there's some liability risks with that. But you are still saying you've got, that's funny that a guy tossed his dogs over the fence. Clearly the fence isn't stopping that individual from doing what needs to be done. So I'm big on enforcement, put up those ordinances, put up the signs and enforce those. But also those onesies, twosies, those community members that their resources were used, I think should have access to it as well.
So I want to make it clear, this has nothing to do with loss of revenue. That is not my charge is to protect our assets from the executive branch as much as I can. I believe that this is a great community asset, one that the public has access to for a reasonable fee when they want to use it, a very reasonable fee. And we need to, and that fee is really just so we can keep that asset going perpetually to refurbish what we put in there. My reluctance of having them completely unlocked and unsupervised is when something happens there and we don't catch it, now it goes back to the taxpayers that have to foot the bill. Tearing the turf is not a cheap date. I mean, picture someone just tearing the carpet in here. That's a lot cheaper than replacing anything in the turf. And having them unlocked, and yes, we can try enforcing it, but we enforce things at Lake Danoon, and look at all the problems we've had over the years down there. And those are just like kids burning bathrooms and stuff like that. Kids are malicious, and
People are.
Well, I don't think we're going to stop.
Ultimately, it's the council's choice on this.
I don't think we're going to stop the malicious. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I know it's a higher liability.
But we can put up certain roadblocks, and having it gated and locked.
Maintenance, preventive things.
Do we charge a fee to reserve a pavilion at any of our other parks?
To reserve one, yes.
I don't think this would be any different than if you wanted to use the field, paying a fee to reserve it if you wanted to use the field. And I think the fields are going to be used so much, I don't know if there's going to be a lot of time for people to just walk on. I know when my boys were playing ball, we had a hard time finding a vacant field. We drove around to almost every field through Winwood Lake to New Berlin to find a place to practice on. There's other fields out there. There's batting cages out there. There's bullpens out there. We used the high school batting cage. We used Horn Park batting cage and bullpen. Now, I know Horn is not, I don't even know if the cages still exist over there, but I know they were in real rough shape. Oh my gosh, 10 years ago already. Horn.
Okay.
But I think we're looking at preservation instead of revenue generation by keeping it locked, so they last longer. So it is a good asset to the community for people to use. Because I do believe once everything's done, they're going to be used probably close to a daily basis. And if somebody wants to reserve it, I feel that they can pay the fee, and then that way there's a little bit of
Protection.
thank you, protection on it. And we know who is using it. And I think the maliciousness will come probably after dark anyhow when the field's closed, and it's not going to make a difference at that time.
The one thing I also want to point out on, if your goal is to have a place where people can do batting practice and practice their pitching, I think that's something we should look at in the capital budget of adding out there, because those are relatively inexpensive. I don't know if I've announced it yet, but I'm not going to announce who yet, but we do have a substantial donor to improve another field out there that's going to pay. I plan on getting the other field done.
For turf?
Yes. So that'll be coming forward relatively soon. But maybe as we do that, that's something we look at adding, batting cages and a bullpen for people to, those we can keep open. The last thing I want to just point out, and then I'll stay out of it at this point, but the other concern about having it open is the finger pointing you're going to get from the groups that do reserve it. If some damage happens and all of a sudden they come and we look at it after done and there's something happened, they're going to say, well, that was there when we got here. Well,
Well, the question I have is that we were talking, or I brought up the public side, being public school or public park. And I don't know the answer to this. I probably could guess, but I think the football field is probably not open, right?
Mm-mm.
You can't just walk on the football field. And I guess that would be
No,
similar
but
to
most of
walking
the school stuff is reservable at no charge.
But I'm just saying, you just can't go and walk on it, right?
No.
It's locked. I guess that kind of parallels with the park being locked. I know we talked about this as he said it in depth, but I never heard the word locked. And, so when we put this all together, I wasn't thinking that we're gonna lock it and keep it out. I mean, it's a good point that you brought up that, it's under construction, it should be locked, We should have that blocked off now and, actually, enforcing it until, because that's the tough thing. The bad thing is that this is the second go around on this thing, if we go back and we analyze that, we had a park that anybody could use and it was paid for by the people. And then it's paid for by the people again, and we have a park that they can't use part of. So there's a little, it's good we're having this discussion, I guess. We have a lot of valid points why to keep it locked. But at the same time, we have some good points that it should be open. So I guess where Bob was kind of going is that maybe we need to have some type of reservations that, put a sign up there that people can access it if that's something we want to do. And maybe they don't have to do like a player's fee, a game fee. Maybe it's a different fee or something. I don't know. Like you said, the high school is free.
Yeah, you just need insurance, like,
The high school turf field is not
no,
free.
the baseball fields are.
But the baseball. but
Almost
not the
all their
turf. So
facilities, but
football
you still
field is
need,
turf,
you need
right?
insurance. It's a little bit more than
But I'm
just
just saying,
like,
maybe-
give me the field.
I don't know, is it a good thing that we open it up for people to use? Possibly, possibly not. I don't know.
Over the last, I don't know, 5 years or so, we've now lost 4 fields in Muskego. If we count these as, they're not, you just can't show up and use them, right? We lost 1 at Mill Valley, or did we lose 2? 2. So we've now lost 5 softball fields as walk-on accessible over the last 4 or 5 years in Muskego.
Any comments down here?
One thing I just kind of.
Second.
Yeah, I would tend to think you're relating it to the idea of like how we protect a building has some merit in the discussion. And the problem is we don't have a practice field at Park Arthur, but other fields could be designated as designated practice fields when open.
Yeah.
So I would think we have balance if we have fields that we say these are not going to be open as practice fields and those that could be opened as practice fields.
We currently allow, you can reserve any of the fields, but when they're not being reserved, the other non-turf fields, we don't have any problems with kids coming up and playing on them when they're not being used. And those are out throughout the whole city.
Yeah, and that's what you would call a practice field then.
For that time, yeah.
Yeah.
How many other non-turf fields are there currently?
I'm going to miss one if I count, so you guys.
Ford, Bloom, Horn, Jensen, New, and Kirk.
And
And
Schmidt,
Horn.
and Schmidt Park has a small,
Fields.
Schmidt Park
Schmidt has.
as a baseball for practice.
We're not counting that.
So for a father with a couple of kids out there, there's ample opportunity to go to other fields to practice. And there's open space areas too that people don't necessarily need a field. We've made a big investment in those fields. And I understand, John, what you're saying, that it'd be nice to have access to those fields, but there are other opportunities for people to practice, and I could see preserving those fields for the intended use of the reason we put the turf in there.
It's hard for me because we didn't make the investment, the community did. It wasn't something that came out of the extra from the city side. It's taxpayer money, right? So
It's always taxpayer
yeah,
money.
I know it is correct. So the idea, they paid for it, and now when they call and say, oh, sorry, you can't use it, by the way, we used your tax money for it too. That doesn't sit well.
The question I have is the other parks that we have are more, they're not game-ready fields, are they? Oh, they are. Okay, so if we had a practice field, we would not maintain it the same as a game-ready field, right? They would be maintained the same. Okay. Because the question I have is, I know you gave a suggestion, the mayor gave a suggestion of adding cages and some other things, but we do have a lot of land there. So we can look down to the future of just putting a grass surface in. It can be multi-purpose. I mean, there's a lot of land we're not using in that spot. And we do have some of it that's been kind of graded or something, right? I don't know what happened. You guys know more about what goes on over there. And you can tell me about the open space over there that is it gonna cost an arm and a leg to do something with, or can we just kind of surface it and kind of maintain it and use it more as a practice area rather than a
Yeah, I
game-ready
had
area?
some renderings made a couple months ago just to kind of promote the whole park as a whole. And there's a area just as you approach that you could get a 30 by 70 batting cage in with 2 lanes in it. Very cost effective with a turf, so low maintenance. And then up by field 4, a spot for a full bullpen. So if you wanted to go up and just hit and throw to your kid, there'll be L screens in there, and you can get batting practice in, or you can go up on top.
Can you asphalt batting cages?
Not if you want to use your balls over.
What's that?
It wouldn't be a good idea for the balls. They'll get all beat up.
And just the heat alone. I mean, you know, it's.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen some, that's why I asked. I've never been on one, but
A lot of places just have used turf, like off of, say, if the
Oh,
high school would
yeah.
resurface.
that makes sense.
It's impossible to get rid of because you pay for tipping fees to dump it, so people just say, hey, come and grab it. I've got some contacts for that also. Just if it gets to a point, you're pretty much pouring a slab, putting up the batting cage, and you're ready to go right away.
But I was talking more about a green space out there that we had. We had some dilemmas with how it was graded and whatever, right?
I think you're talking about the west side of the park.
Is that, I don't know. I just remember something, it's a lot of conversations on this park over the years. And I know there's even other land that's probably wooded out there that we can still take a look at for the future of doing something, rather than trying to look at developing it with residential homes. Keep it as a park, it's something that's more accessible. I mean, that's a big park. It's close to the lake. You know, it's close to the fireworks. I mean, there's a lot of good reasons to open that park up in the long run and do more with it. So maybe that's some of the conversations we can have. I mean, I know it all costs money, you know.
No, and I agree with you on that. I mean, like I said, we're going to be looking at field 4 relatively soon. Maybe the suggestions Ryan's making with the batting cages and bullpens can be added. Parking is going to definitely have to be addressed out there in the next few years. But the more we have people coming in and using this for baseball, they're going to start seeing the other amenities that are there, the sledding hills and the archery ranges and stuff like that. So that park is definitely going to be I don't know how you classify parks, but a Class A type park for people to attending and going to. So
Now, do we have an overflow lot out there already, right? Or no?
no,
We were talking, or somewhere conversation came at one time about doing a gravel overflow lot or
we're
something.
talking about what options we can do as parking becomes an issue out there. But we have that whole west side, like you said, that we can look at.
But, you know, I just think a multi-purpose green area would probably be good if we want to open up more baseball or. but then
Almost
you got
no one's
football, you got
walking to
soccer.
it.
What's that?
Almost no one's walking to this park per se. So
Right,
the
right.
fact that we have plenty of green space all over this community and parks.
But not for what he's brought up today. I'm just looking for
maybe
solutions
not
to
right
park
there,
out
but
yeah.
I mean, we do all over this community. And like I
Well,
said,
you did
almost
make
no
a
one's
good
walking
point.
there. If you're going with your kids, you're jumping in the car anyway.
But he made a good point. We lost 6 fields now if you count how many we have turf now? 2 or 3?
3.
3, and we're looking at possibly a 4th being turf. That'll be all 4 of them, right?
Yeah.
And then we lost 2 at another park. So, I mean, there is some good discussion to be had here on, I always say, the gift that keeps on giving or taking, in the park. But if it's something that people are using and the community's all for it, I'd like to have a little more time and study into it and hear what people have to say rather than just make a rash decision.
So far we're clear as mud. Which way do you guys want to go on this? Can we do a straw poll of keep it the same or open it up? Eileen?
I'm all for keeping it the same. I think we have enough places for practice, and I'd like to keep those fields pristine.
Kevin?
And I agree.
John?
Keep it.
You know where I stand, but yeah, I would open.
Alder. By the way, happy birthday.
Want no cake?
Yeah. Where are you? John. Alderman Hamel, where were you?
Keep it the same.
All right.
Well, I'm kind of on the fence. I mean, I like the idea of it being locked to protect the assets. I like the idea of it being locked during construction. But I do also like the idea that, it's a public park. So it kind of throws things up in the air. And I'd like to see something with a green space out there develop, even if they just put a fence up so that you have like a backdrop for a ball or something, but some kind of a multi-use area that we can direct people to in that park rather than telling, well, you got to go to a different park. So I don't know how we'd address it. I just like to see a little more time put in rather than throw a couple batting cages up.
Let's, well, I guess my suggestion is we can always bring this back. Let's get a full year under our belt of the way we're doing it.
Yeah, let's hear from the public.
And let's also, you know, give me a year or so to line up a couple more sponsors for that other field. And when we do that, we can look at the park as a whole and what we're all going to do out there, do some master planning.
I mean, how much acreage do we have out there that's not developed? I mean, that we could work with.
And the west side is 20.
And that's wooded and everything?
No, not including the woods, just that west side.
And that's open already? That's an open area?
It's open green space.
So it's already developed, so we,
And there's a lot of land, 20
yeah,
acres.
so I mean, we could take a little square out of there and make a little multi-purpose area, you know?
For example, the high school fields west of the football field there, so like where the soccer and baseball fields all are, that's 40 acres. So about
That's
half.
40.
So you could, yes, you have a lot you can do there.
But yeah, I don't mind the idea of letting it go for a little bit and getting some feedback and hear what, you know, if nobody complains and nobody really is happy and they find other places to go, there's not a major issue, you know?
All right, thank you. Any other communications, miscellaneous business? Motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? We're adjourned at 6:05.